Shabbat Shalom. We'll be reading the very end of chapter 10 in the book of Exodus. We're right at the end of the plagues. Moses has been through his rigmarole with Pharaoh a number of times now, 9 to be exact, and we're approaching the moment at which the Israelites finally begin their journey. But there's a dialogue that happens between Pharaoh and Moses just as the 9th plague ends. Pharaoh turns to Moses and says, "Be gone from me. I don't want to see you again. For the moment that you look upon my face, you shall die." Moses has been waiting for Pharaoh to say these words, that they can leave, that Pharaoh doesn't want to see the Israelites any longer. And yet he replies, "You're right. I won't see your face again." It's the equivalent of the disgruntled boss saying, "I'm sick of you, you're fired," and the disgruntled employee turning back and saying, "You can't fire me because I quit." The question that we find in the Torah this week is a question of whether we have the courage to reject what is toxic in front of us, in our society, in our lives, even if it seems like it may start to go away on its own. For the past 2 weeks, our country has debated precisely this: whether the President of the United States should be removed, or whether we should simply sit back and wait the remaining days for his presidency to end. Of course, after this Wednesday, we know the answer to that question. And so it falls to us now. How passive will we be? Will groups like the Proud Boys just go away now that they are not amplified by political leaders? Will Camp Auschwitz sweatshirts no longer bother us because it's no longer the first story on the news? Or will we make a conscious choice to say, you don't get to just walk away from this? That in fact, we, representatives of society, we quit this toxicity. We refuse to allow it, even if it's not on the front page. Of the many messages President Biden shared in the past 3 days since taking office, the one that has stayed with me the most has been his call to end what he called this uncivil war. And I, like you, I imagine, want it to end. But the question the Torah asks this week is, in part, a response to that question. Not every disagreement needs to be cause for a civil war, but some. Some statements, some deeply held beliefs, and hateful acts should not be tolerated. Sometimes we cannot just let things go or pretend that they do not exist simply because we don't see them as much anymore. In the last 5 years, we've witnessed an unprecedented increase in anti-Semitism and of hate of all kinds. And while I desperately look forward to debates over policies, I hope that we can return to a time when some things are simply out of bounds, not open for debate. As the well-publicized Facebook post stated, and a friend posted, there are many in our population who believe in a completely alternate reality than I do. But just as intensely as I believe they are deluded, they think I'm the one who's deluded as well. And maybe I am. So how can I be confident in my perception? It can be difficult, but I have found that in times of political confusion, particularly when emotions are running high and creating tunnel vision, that the presence of Nazis can be an extremely helpful factor. For if I'm attending a local demonstration or event and I see Nazis or neo-Nazis or casual Nazis or master race Nazis, I figure out which side they're on. And if they're on my side, then I'm on the wrong side. Sometimes we have to quit rather than being fired. That is what Moses does in these verses. It's a powerful statement of his power, of his independence, And in those brief words, he reminds us that we have to value ourselves enough to make the effort to walk away ourselves. I know for some of us it's quite easy to denounce the acts of far right-wing groups. Because, of course, for those of us who would never have considered voting for President Trump or any Republican, it's easy to denounce the other side. Too easy, perhaps. There's no love lost there. Those are not the voices that need to be heard in this moment. Those are the voices expected to be heard in this moment. The most important and most difficult rejection is the one that comes from those close to you. There's a story told by author Lori Gottlieb where she expresses this point in humor and on no scale near what our politics are. But still, the truth is, it is most difficult to break away from those toxic people and acts when they are the people whom we love. Lori Gottlieb writes about her experience with her own nagging Jewish mother. I know, hard for us to believe. As an adult single woman, Lori's mother would call her constantly. She jokingly, but not entirely jokingly, referred to her mother, who she loved, as a PMD, a person of mass destruction. Writing this well before the age of cell phones, Lori decided that she would go out and buy a phone that would certainly change her life because, as she saw in the Best Buy ad with 18 features, the most important feature being it had caller ID. So she brought it home, she plugged it in, and the phone began to ring, as she knew. And then she looked at the digital screen and it said, "Caller unknown." "Hello, this is Lori," she answered. "What, you thought I didn't know how to make my number disappear in caller ID?" her mom said. It was in that moment that Lori decided to change her perspective. She no longer thought of her mom as a PMD, but referred to herself as a PSD, a person of self-destruction. Whatever faults her mom had, she realized it was up to her to make change happen in her life. She did not divorce her mom, but she did unplug her phone. The most important and most difficult rejection is the one that comes from those who are close to you. And so we remember this week, as Moses says these words, that he grew up as an Egyptian. He was raised by Pharaoh's daughter. This is the voice that we have to hear now. Not the voices we expect, but the ones of those who agreed with every policy and excused every tweet, who supported the platform that proved to be a platform for actions we can't afford to tolerate. I don't believe it will be easy, but I do think for those members of this congregation, for those family members of ours, for those people in our community who know that they were close to this, perhaps got too close to this, that it's important that you say you quit rather than being fired. We have to take responsibility for what is toxic in our lives and what is toxic in our society. And we have to explain and say aloud that we can't tolerate it. The moment that Moses quits Egypt is the moment he truly embraces what it means to be responsible for the changes that he wanted to see. That is the moment we are reading in our Torah this evening. And I pray that is the moment we will come to know in the days to come, as I hope the voices we need to hear say the words that need to be said. We turn